Hello and welcome. Ghana's economy expanded by 5.4% last year. That's far higher than the 0.4% recorded in the year 2020, a period in which the COVID-19 pandemic had severely hit the global economy. According to a provisional estimate by the Ghana Statistical Service, only 10 countries in Africa recorded growth rates higher than that of Ghana. The strong growth rate was driven by the services sector, particularly information and communication, as well as technology, and of course, the agric sector, such as the fishing sub-sector as well. Professor Samuel Kobna Enin is government statistician. Take a listen to him make this announcement.
We look at the last quarter of 2021 from a sub-sector perspective, starting with the agricultural sector. Keep in mind that for the last quarter of 2021, the agricultural sector recorded the highest growth rate of 8.2%. Within the agricultural sector, the lead subsector was the fishing subsector, which grew at 21.2% in the last quarter of 2021, and the sector that recorded the least growth over the same period was the forestry and logging subsector, which recorded a growth rate of 3.4%. In the industry subsector, we saw that the water and sewage subsector recorded the highest growth rate of 21.7%, keeping in mind that the industry sector grew the least across the three subsectors with a growth rate of 4.8%, and the mining and quarrying subsector recorded the least growth of 0.5%. Oil and gas over the same period, that is the last quarter of 2021, grew by 0.2%. Within the services subsector, that had the second highest growth rate for the last quarter of 2021, grew by 8.1%, with information and communication being the lead subsector, which grew by 52.3% on a year-on-year basis. And indeed, we did record a contraction for the health and social work subsector as it contracted by 13.1%. We now turn over to the annual estimate, that is GDP for the whole period, that is January to December 2021, keeping in mind that 2013 is the base year. The provisional current annual GDP estimate, including oil, for 2021 stood at 459,130.9 million, and this compares with 391,940.7 million, which was recorded for the year 2020. Provisional current excluding oil for the same period, that is annual 2021, stood at 437,975.2 million relative to the 378,147.9 million that was recorded for the same time in 2020. From a subsector point of view, we see that the services sector continues to lead with 48.9% out of the total, corresponding to 210,882.2 million Ghana cedis, followed by the industry sector, which recorded 30% of the overall GDP for the year 2021, corresponding to 129,771.1 million Ghana cedis. And again, on an annual basis, we see the agriculture recording the least with 21%, corresponding to 90,489.1 million Ghana cedis.
And that's the government statistician there. Well, a telling part of this statistic is the agric sector's impressive contribution to GDP in 2021. The sector grew by 8.4%. It was driven by the fisheries subsector, which grew by 13.4%, whilst the forestry and logging subsectors expanded by 4.7%. Now, how can this be improved or maintained this year round? Already, food prices have skyrocketed amid the high cost of fertilizer on the global market. Joining us to discuss are economists with the University of Ghana, Dr. Sarkodie, and Anthony Morrison, who is the Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to start off with you, Dr. Sarkodie. 5.4% from 0.4% indicates basically a strong economic rebound. Are we out of the woods yet, especially when we are really kind of recovering marginally from the devastation of COVID?
It's an improvement over the 2020 figure. The economy is recovering, but for the Russia-Ukraine war, the economy will have recovered more strongly than what we see in 2022. But this is, of course, this is 2021 figure. So it was expected, and we know the sectors that were leading in the growth, the information and telecommunication sector. Even in COVID, this subsector was still growing. In fact, I was told that the telcos made over 60% profit during COVID. And so we have seen a shift of the economy. We know now we know the drivers of the economy, which is the service sector. And I think that is why I've always supported the introduction of e-levy, because it is to the sector which is growing, and I think it's a good thing. But most importantly is the agric and then the industry sector, which is supposed to employ more Ghanaians. The agric sector was growing or grew by 8%, as we were told, but we know that just this little effect from the Russia-Ukraine war, we have seen increment in food prices. So the question still remains that if the agri sector is growing and is still import dependent, then we have to answer some questions. So I want to see a more domestically produced inputs for the agri sector that is more sustainable than always depending on other countries for the intermediaries or the inputs into the agri sector. So it's a good sign that the economy is recovering, but most importantly, it must be based on local production, and then the growth must also come from areas that can create jobs. That is a more sustainable way of growing the GDP. And so it's a step in the right direction. We can do better than this in the year 2022 and 2023 going forward.
I want us to juxtapose this statistic from the GSS to the World Bank's forecast of a 5.5% expansion in our economy this year. I mean, how do you balance both projections from your perspective?
Well, I think basically the projections have been based on increases in commodity prices, given the fact that Ghana is the first producer of gold in Africa, and then the number 6 producer of gold in the world. We have seen increment in gold prices. Cocoa prices is also quite sustainable. We have seen increment in crude oil price. The government budgeted $62 per barrel, and now we are doing about $100 per barrel. So the increment in commodity prices have been the driving force for the public finance and also the GDP growth. And if there's any external shock to the commodity prices, our economy will badly be affected. And that is why there shouldn't be over-reliance on primary commodities. We should just add value and industrialize. So given the fact that the commodity prices have picked up, I think it's a good sign. And going forward, we must try and add value to our commodities so that we can sustain the growth. The most important thing is to sustain the growth. If we are able to sustain our growth between, say, 7 and 10% for the next 5 to 10 years, Ghana will be better, far better than what we see now. So my concern usually has to do with the sustainability of the growth. We can grow 8 and then you decline to say 0.4 or 1 or 3, and that would not give us the needed benefits. So the sustainability is the most important thing. How do we sustain that? We do not control the commodity prices. The cocoa prices are always given to us. Gold prices, Ghana does not determine the gold prices. So all these commodity prices that are driving the growth are not determined by Ghanaians. They are determined on the market, and you don't have control over them. And therefore, we should be able to position our economy in such a way that we have maximum control over so many things, or maximum control over the drivers of the GDP growth. When you have control over the drivers, you can create the needed jobs for the people of Ghana.
Dr. Edusako, we're grateful that I could help us out with the analysis on, the GDP estimate. Well, Anthony Morrison is the Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. He also joins us on this. Anthony, the performance of the agri sector in 2021, impressive. Where do you see its performance this year around, especially where we are seeing the remnants of, COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, its impact on global supply chain, which is even having, trickle-down effect on fertilizer prices? I'm afraid we're having issues connecting with Anthony, but we'll try and do that to get more of his insight on this matter. But Dr. Sarkodie, you're still around. How can we sustain the growth going forward? You have stated categorically that to sustain the growth would have to add value to our produce, but also help us understand the external factors to our growth pattern this time around. How can we, cushion ourselves against external factors, which, as you rightly stated once again, we have no, power over?
Yeah, we know the external factors usually, affect us. We have seen the effect on our city. Mostly we dependent on external borrowing to sustain the value of our city. So when the government could not borrow, you saw the depreciation of the city and also the foreign investors taking, selling the sovereign bonds. And again, over the years, even since independence, we have seen how the fall in commodity prices, has affected our economy. In the year 2015, due to the fall in crude oil price, the finance minister at that time had to go back to the Parliament of Ghana to revise his entire budget. We have seen that under President Rawlings in all the regimes that have come. So we don't have to over-rely on these external things. And that is why there's every reason to link the agric with the industrial sector, with the industry, the manufacturing sector, so that we locally produce, for example, fertilizer. Now, because of the war, fertilizer prices has increased, and if we are able to produce our own fertilizer, this will help us, get fertilizer at lower prices. And there are so many of such examples of such inputs that can be done. So, first of all, let's locally produce some of these simple inputs into agriculture. And I've mentioned fertilizer, irrigation is there. And there should be a direct link between the agri sector and manufacturing. And I'm sure with this, we can build the structure of the economy strongly.
Indeed, indeed. Anthony, I would want you to pick up from where the economist left off regarding the agri sector and the need for us to add value to it. We do know that the agri sector last year faced its own challenges regarding supply chain, constraints. This year, we're also having a bout of the war in the eastern side. How much of an impact can this have on our performance in the medium to long term?
Judging from what we did, I think the challenge borders onto our commitment towards our agenda. Yes, of course, the supply chain will have an impact, or they have an impact on us now. 2021, it will have an impact on us because the COVID has made it in a way that the way we used to work before the COVID came, it didn't work that way. The production went down. Then, of course, we had a huge leap in the cost of freight globally, and that has also impacted negatively onto the supply chain.
All right. Okay. We're having some challenges, Anthony, hearing you out. So if you could reposition so we could really appreciate your submission proper. But even as you do that, what remains the existing threats to Ghana's food basket, and how imminent is the country to a food situation? I'm afraid we have lost Anthony Morrison there. The line's not being favorable for this conversation. But you heard him there, Chief Executive of the Agribusiness Chamber. But before we go on this particular topic, let's wrap up with Dr. Sarkodie. Doctor, so of course, Anthony Morrison is really in tune with your submission regarding the need for us to add more value to our produce. But help us appreciate the threats that exist when it comes to food security, the agri sector bouncing back, external donors and partners, most of these threats that often hinder our target and our progress economically.
Food security is key to the development of our nation. This country cannot afford, another scarcity of food, and that will deepen poverty. People will be dying out of hunger here and there, and therefore we must make sure that we ensure all-round food production. First of all, let's get the irrigations right, let's get the inputs right, and then also improve the storage.
All right. And
then get the price subsidized. If it's possible, the government can subsidize some of these inputs for the farmers. But my last submission now is I have traveled across many countries, and I think that Ghana is behind weighing the food items. It is about time that we weigh the food items on the scale, so that maybe a tuber of yam will, cost the same from Abubloshi market to the Medina market to any other market that you can talk about. This will also help harmonize all prices of food items.
Okay, Dr. Adisa Kodia, we're grateful as always for your submission on this issue. He's an economist with the University of Ghana. Away from that, government will end the year missing out on a single-digit inflation rate target. Now, this is because the latest IMF Economic Outlook report is casting doubt about the government hitting its 8% inflation target. George Rafi has more.
IMF in the report is projecting that government would end the year with an inflation rate of 16.3%. This is far higher than its own 8% that it was hoping to achieve by the end of this year. If this report is anything to go by, then it will be the second time in 2 years that government is missing out on its end-of-year inflation rate target. It is not clear for now what is influencing the IMF projection for the economy. The forecast may back claims that the current price hikes for foodstuffs on the market will not be ending anytime soon, with some analysts projecting that the rate will only start coming down in the last quarter of this year. March inflation rate currently stands at 19.4%, so there's a likelihood that we will continue to witness some spikes in terms of the general price levels going up before reducing marginally in the last 3 months of this year. The projection could be in line with a similar report by the Economic Intelligence Unit, which is also noted that government will not meet its 8% inflation rate target for this year. But the question on the minds of some analysts is that, will this raise some credibility issues for government when it comes to its end-of-year macroeconomic targets outlined in the budget? This is because in 2021, it ended that year without achieving its single-digit inflation rate target.
Ghana's moderate to high exposure to imports of wheat, edible oils and fertilizer from Russia has triggered increases in prices of foodstuffs and certain commodities on the market. According to the latest World Bank Africa Pulse report, Ghana imports about 33% of wheat and a little above 20% of fertilizers from Russia, ranking it among African economies with high dependence on European countries. Charles Nsiemboa has been looking through this report and has more.
The impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on commodity prices has compounded existing challenges in global food markets, including increasing prices and tightening supplies due to the COVID-19 pandemic, among others. This has already pushed inflation rate high to 19.4% in March this year, with food inflation exceeding 24%. The World Bank said Ghana, together with Kenya, Mali and Nigeria, have moderate to high exposure to wheat imports from Russia. Again, the country, together with other African countries, including Cote d'Ivoire, have moderate to high exposure of edible oils and fertilizers from Ukraine and Russia. It further explained that the impact of the rising global commodity prices on African countries' terms of trade is uncertain. It, however, added that Ghana and many oil importers in the region will benefit from the rally in global prices for industrial metals.
You're still watching The Marketplace. Today in tech business, there is a growing threat of scams in Ghana's blockchain ecosystem. Now, we assess the basic means of avoiding being a victim of feel-good Bitcoin products. Henry Kopler is lead of tech firm Eyes of Africa, and he joins us for more. Henry, are we seeing a rise in scam cases on the blockchain of digital currencies?
Okay, thank you, Charles. So when it gets down to blockchain and the cryptocurrency market, generally what I would say is that it's going to start having some of these scam cases rising, not because the technology is flawed, because generally you're going to have quite a number of people trying to find ways and means around the technology to basically make some money out. So generally, we're going to have some level of scams here and there. Generally, that's what the Bank of Ghana would advise people to be careful, because it is a very unregulated sector. And so they wouldn't have any means to regulate any reactions or inactions of people available there. Generally, the platform sort of in terms of the cryptocurrency market itself, in terms of some of the cryptocurrency itself, blockchain platform basically is more secured. But there are quite a number of people that are going to find opportunities around these platforms.
But how can consumers actually identify and avoid these scams, Henry?
So before you get into the cryptocurrency market, you sort of first need to know what exactly you really want to do in that market. There are people that are investing into some of the cryptocurrency coins. There are some people that are trading on the daily basis. Some of them are going into investment skills. So there are quite a number of things that you can basically be doing. But the point is, so far as a digital platform, you're going to be on digital exchanges. And so the very first point where you're going to have your currencies should actually be very secure. There are quite a number of wallets that are premium wallets where you should be looking at saving some of your cryptocurrency coins there, which is very important. The very second thing is to understand what type of cryptocurrencies you sort of purchasing on these platforms. Now, there are quite a number of them, and so you should definitely be going, they're actually also in ranks where you would see that the cryptocurrencies are in a particular order. And so in that order makes it very easy to basically have a trust connected with them. Secondly, if you are into cryptocurrency, what I would always advise you to do is to have a little bit of education around it. There are white papers that are issued in terms of every single currency. And so you should definitely be looking out for the white paper for that particular currency that you buy. And the second thing you should also be looking out for is to be looking out for the websites of these cryptocurrencies, reading much more about them, who's behind it. There's a typical face behind it. Go to their LinkedIn profiles, check out their LinkedIn profiles, their Twitter accounts, their social media accounts. Be sure that there's a proper setup around each one. If they've mentioned any bigger companies that are affiliated to them, you should actually check on those affiliate companies as well to be sure that there's a proper mention of each cryptocurrency or blockchain product mentioned on their websites as well. The next thing I'll probably make mention of is to be sure that there are groups that are having sort of discussions around it, and you sort of can follow up in terms of any of the discussions that are around that particular point. Don't be fooled by some of the conversations or endorsements by superstars or some of the big boys in the industry, because they would only just go for endorsements but not really understand the tech product or the platform itself. They might just endorse anything but might not necessarily be correct in that regard.
Indeed. A very good point there. How exposed are consumers in Ghana specifically to the threats of digital scams, especially when it comes to cryptocurrencies? Charles,
not to alarming, but we are really exposed when it gets down to cryptocurrencies. That's not a lie. That's what the Bank of Ghana relatively will tell you, that be careful when you're going into cryptocurrency. Again, there are also enormous opportunities when it gets down to the cryptocurrency and blockchain markets. And so people definitely who would like to get in can just do a bit of education and understand and get in. So we sort of expose, when you get scammed on any of these platforms, I don't think that you can walk into any institution in Ghana to do a claim to any of the actions you took when you're actually purchasing or selling any of these cryptocurrencies. So sort of we're very exposed in there, but there are also opportunities that we can't let go or wait for some policies to be set up in place. But I think that one of the most important things you should be doing is that get a tech expert that understands anything. If you are interested in these cryptocurrency markets, there are some very credible groups that have a lot of discussions, and so you can sort of ask a lot of questions and get to understand the core fundamental actions that you're taking on any cryptocurrency and blockchain product before you get in. I can just give a website called CoinMarketCap. If you really want to learn a lot about cryptocurrencies, the website, the groups, the social media, how much is worth, what is the fall, what's the rise, all of those ones can be found on that website, and you can do some level of studies on there. That platform basically verifies every single point before they are actually put on the market. Indeed. And so you can sort of check out that, but also get a tech expert. Great. Please do not follow endorsement by stars purporting to be promoting some of these cryptocurrency they might not necessarily understand what is there.
Endorsements are not necessarily testament proof of how valuable a product is. You have to do the research yourself, as you rightly stated, Henry. Grateful that you could join us on Tech Business. That's how we end this edition of The Marketplace. I'm Charles Aite. For more news, do log on to myjoyonline.com. We could get the latest in business and around the world. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our programs.